Hello, Monetization Nation. In 2016, David Jenyns successfully systematized himself out of his business, one of Australia's most trusted digital agencies, MelbourneSEOservices.com. Through this process, he became a systems devotee, founding systemHUB and SYSTEMology. Today, his mission is to free all business owners worldwide from the daily operations of running their business. In today's episode, we're going to discuss how we can build our credibility and authority content, and we'll discuss how he systematized his business. In this episode, we will cover the following key takeaways. Number one, to generate credibility for ourselves, we can host a small event that solves a problem for our target audience and repurpose the content. Number two, by creating systems, we can make success repeatable. And number three, with systems implemented in our businesses, we can remove ourselves from the day-to-day tasks required to run our organizations. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
My pleasure. Very much looking forward to the interview.
So can you start off by sharing with us something that you are super passionate about and why?
Yes, my passion at the moment is to, and you mentioned it in that intro, that whole idea of freeing all business owners worldwide from the day-to-day operations of running their business. That's like my dream for our company, and kind of sparked off the back of my last business. And after selling that business, I took some time out and I thought, oh, what is it that I think I can really add some sort of value to business owners who I feel really passionate about? And then I just went to work on this process of how do you take a business owner who started a business from scratch, grown it up to a certain size, and then started to find that they're the bottleneck. How do you then help them bridge through that to the next stage of business where they really step out of the operations and then start to build this business that works without them? And I've just been intently focusing on that for probably about the past 5 years or thereabouts, just thinking, how do we solve that problem and how do we do that in an elegant manner?
Yeah, sounds almost too good to be true, actually. So tell us a story. How did you fire yourself, hire a CEO, move to the beach, and triple your bottom line?
Yes. Well, it started off, I had been in my digital agency, Melbourne SEO, for would have been a little over 10 years. And then I was just like a lot of business owners, working really long hours, doing the early mornings, late nights, weekends, like constantly thinking about business. And I'd recently gotten married, and then we found out we were pregnant. And I just had that thought in my head. I just thought, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy to, spend time with the kids. And I just thought, well,
Man, I hear you.
Yeah, it was almost like that. I don't know, just a little bit of a wake up call, and then add in the fact that you got like a timeline, like, the baby's going to arrive in 9 months. So you got to get yourself into gear. So I really started intently focusing on, okay, well, how can we capture what we're currently doing? How do we systemize that? And over the course of that 9 months, I had someone internal who was kind of showing some promise, and I gave her some extra responsibility, and we started working through some of the classics like the E-Myth and Traction and Scaling Up, some of these books that sort of help you through this process of growing and scaling your business. And we systemized the business, and I managed to step back and take some time off and put Melissa in charge of that business for what ended up being the next few years. She ran that business. I slowly kind of got less and less involved. Once the baby arrived, I took some time out, and then I was sort of checking in with her once a month, and we'd do little status updates and see how she was going and give her feedback and point her in the right direction. And it got to this point where I thought, I'm never going to sell this business. Like, it got to a little machine where we were very particular with what we were delivering for the clients. We'd systemized it. She was running it. And for 3 years, I was just getting like a quarterly profit distribution. And it wasn't until she ended up getting a call from her family, because she's got family back in the States, and she had to hop on the plane to fly home. And when she came back, she ended up resigning. And that for me at the time was a huge punch in the guts, because I was like, I'm going to get pulled back into this business. Like, this business was me before she was involved. Like, we had a small team of 10 or 15, but everything was going through me. And I'd really tasted what it's like to have someone step in, take over that responsibility and run it. And I thought, even if we have to recruit someone to replace her, that's going to, I'm going to be involved as we train them up. So that was the point at which I thought, okay, well, now we'll sell this business. And I took the business to market, and the guy who ended up buying it basically cited two reasons he bought it. One, the financial performance, and the second, he said, the systems and the fact that the business wasn't working with you as the centerpiece for the last 3 years. And that was my sort of real moment where I was like, wow, systems, they just give you so many extra options. Because if we hadn't systemized that business and I was still heavily involved, I don't think I would have been able to sell it, because the business was me. And, if when we first started that process, if I wasn't there, the business would grind to a halt. Whereas because we built it up to the level we had, this guy saw some real value and said, I can take what you're doing and expand it even more. That was kind of a few situations like that happened that really got me going, oh, wow, systems are such an important piece of business that a lot of people very rarely master.
What is the greatest home run you've hit in your career so far?
Greatest home run was, it was early on after I'd stepped back. So in the digital agency, after we systemized it and Melissa started running that business, I got a message. It was completely out of the blue from a guy out of the Netherlands who was on the board of like a TEDx committee, one of those, if you're familiar with the TED Talks. He said, I'm on this board, and we were talking about getting an international speaker along. And my dad happened to see some content that you published 10 years ago. And I said to him, hey, do you know anyone who might speak? And he goes, I watched this guy like 10 years ago on YouTube, and he just stuck in my mind. I wonder what he's doing today. And they ended up finding me, chasing me down, and outreach, and said, would you like to come and do a TEDx presentation in the Netherlands? And depending on when they would have contacted me, if they probably contacted me a year or two prior to that, I don't think I would have been able to take the opportunity, because I couldn't step away from the business at that point in time. But we'd systemized it. We had my first son, and I just had this little window. It was perfect. And then, I prepared for a TEDx talk and flew over and presented it in the Netherlands. Took, a week out just for the trip. But then there's quite a lot of prep time in getting all of everything ready. And I got to share my philosophies around systems thinking and how it applies to life. So I'd probably say that I look back very fondly on that moment.
Yeah, I've done a TEDx talk myself, and I was shocked after the fact to realize how much time that took. What a commitment that was to prepare the talk, so you get every word right, and you can deliver it without looking at any notes or anything. And
it's non-commercial. And
yes.
I had to travel cover my own travel expenses. They put me up and stuff, but it's a real big commitment. And it's funny. I think a lot of business owners, even if they were handed a huge opportunity like that in their lap, a lot of business owners couldn't take it because they're just so caught up in the business. It's hard for them to take that time out. But it's those opportunities, when you follow them, that typically reap the biggest rewards. So you need to create space for those.
I agree. My talk has opened a lot of doors for me. There's been a lot of business meetings that I've walked into, and one of the very first things the person on the other side of the table says is that they've seen my TED Talk, right? Yeah. And it's just instant credibility.
Yeah, those, like, building up those sorts of assets, they're the game changer as far as business is concerned.
Do you have a good story or example of a business that has effectively used credibility marketing?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've got, so the whole idea with authority content was this idea that like, because my brain automatically defaults into systems mode, I always think about, well, what is the system for building authority? What is the system for doing this credibility marketing? Because there's just so many different ways that you can head with it. How do I break it down? And I came up with this approach of running a mini event, and you know, and I kind of stepped through this process, running a mini event that solves a problem for the target audience and kind of walks you through step by step how something is done. You invite people along, you record it, you capture videos on the day with testimonials and things about how people engage with the day, and you get photos. Even when I plan out the day, I often, in my head, I future pace and will say, if this event ends up getting transcribed and then turned into a book, I try and position all of the sessions so it would make logical sense as a book. And then basically we run an event, because, you know, there's nothing like an event where you know you're going to have a room full of people to really force you to create and have everything ready, because you know they're all going to be there on a certain date. And then it creates this mass amount of content, and you can lead up to the event, and then you can reshare all of the content afterwards, and then it kind of builds into your marketing and helps with this idea of building up your credibility as someone who has something to talk about that people would want to come to and listen. And then you can repurpose the heck out of that content. It can be chopped into little videos and uploaded to YouTube. It can be transcribed and turned into articles and things like that. So that's the process. And I mean, in the back of the book, I talk about some of the case studies. Probably one of the ones that really was the biggest game changer for them, a company here in Australia called Compass Pools. They sell swimming pools, and we took them through that process, and they had an event where they talked about things like pool maintenance and how to find and buy the right pool. And we basically batched all of this content creation into one day, making these series of videos that ended up getting chopped up and shared around. And it was a game changer for their business, not only from a traffic perspective, that, you know, we're putting all this content out that could be SEO'd and would get traffic, but then even to the point where when people would come into their showroom, the prospects would see some of the people who are on the videos and point to them and say, "Oh, you're that guy from that video." And there was that instant credibility and trust that was already existed without that guy even never having spoken to them. Kind of like you were saying, when they watch your TEDx and there's that instant credibility, it's almost like that instant credibility was manufactured through this process. And it was a huge win for that business. And I mean, I've got lots of stories like that, but that's probably like a good example of how authority content and credibility marketing can change the game for a business.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a couple more of those stories from authority content. What are a couple more of your favorite stories from that book?
Yeah. So there's one I like. There's a guy who runs a group called WP Elevation. I think they've just recently renamed it, but he's in the space where he teaches like little agencies, solopreneurs and things, how to build web design, WordPress businesses. And he was kind of getting that business up and running. So another business that comes to mind was a company called WP Elevation, based here in Australia. And they help solopreneurs who are kind of starting up these little web design agencies, WordPress businesses. And he was kind of getting that business up and running off the ground. And I said, well, one great way to launch it is to go through this authority content process. So he ran a one-day workshop where he basically brain dumped out all of the steps that he would go through in the way that he would win clients, the way that he would or attract clients in, the way that he would sell to those clients, the way that he would then deliver for those clients and then get them to come back. And he presented this in a one-day workshop, invited a group of his students along, recorded that as this workshop. And then that became kind of like the foundation for all of his marketing for the next year, taking that content, basically chopping it up into little pieces, loading it up to YouTube, SEOing it, writing articles. He's gone on to build that business, into a multi-7-figure business, and they're a very small team. And what he sees as potentially one of the game changers or the catalysts for that was this idea of getting a good steady flow of inbound leads that came from that credibility, authority marketing, that idea of getting this content out there, which pre-sells the people and then they come in. So that was WP Elevation. There's just, it's all about, capturing those, batching that content, and then the way that you repurpose it, there was even other smart things that we did where we took the videos and then we built out an autoresponder sequence that basically dripped this content out. So someone would come across a piece of content, he would end up having a little, like a lead magnet, a reason for them to opt in to get the rest of the series. And then when they would get in the series, the content then ended up getting dripped out over a period of time. And then basically we would have these really highly qualified leads that would be popping out the other end of that sequence. And it's a process that he only had to set up once, but it's just continued to pay dividends. So that's another one. I remember we did another one for a company that makes kitchens and stove tops. They were importing a bunch of these European kitchens and things like that. Again, here in Australia. And we went and we did a series with one of their lead sales guys where he talked through, buying criteria for wine coolers and stove tops and things like that. And then again, we just went through that same process of taking the content, chopping it up, using it in various places. And it ended up opening a couple of doors. They ended up getting onto a couple of quite large sites. The content got repurposed and put onto some large media sites over here, and they got a huge win out of that. You never really know where it's going to head, and each story ends up being a little bit different. The core system and the process is the same, but then the application every time there are its nuances and the effects. It just depends on the business and the audience.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing your stories and insights with us today. To learn more about or connect with David, you can find him on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or check out his book. And you can find links to each of these in the blog post for this episode at monetizationnation.com. You can also get a free ebook that I wrote about passion marketing and learn how to become a top priority of your ideal customers at passionmarketing.com. You can also subscribe to Monetization Nation on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, our Facebook group, and on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I wish you success as you systematize your business. Do you want to become a better digital monetizer? To receive great monetization stories and secrets, please go to monetizationnation.com and join free. And if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the show and share it.